Welcome into ProBox TV's Deep Waters, where we take a deep dive into all things boxing. The big news right now, financial. That's right. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is reportedly in the exploratory stages of forming a boxing league that will bring together the sport's biggest promoters. That's right. We know about His Excellency Turki Alalshikh. He has so far put his money where his mouth is. It could get a lot bigger, could be opening up in 2025. We'll discuss in a bit how this might come together, what it might look like. So far, the details are very, very vague, but Jimmy Smith in studio alongside Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri. Gentlemen, don't know what it's going to look like, but certainly the interest is there. We thought the same thing about Turki Alalshikh in the beginning, right? Yeah, he says he's going to do this, this, and that. He's put together some very big fights. Before we get into nuts and bolts, your excitement level about this announcement, what do you think?
You know what? Anytime there's a change with potential positives, you get excited. We've just gotten accustomed with the getting used to the bottom of the barrel in boxing. That it's like if anything might be positive, okay, we get excited. Like, oh, maybe something better is coming along. And the body of work Turki Alalshikh has put up so far, it's been good. I mean, we've gotten fights in the heavyweight division. It's been moving. Things have been happening. I don't think without Turki, without Turki Alalshikh, some of these fights would not have happened. It wouldn't be as fun. So he's done it in the right direction. Of course, it would have to be maneuvered correctly, guided correctly. But the funds are there to do something cool. And he's done something cool thus far. But again, I stress, it has to be guided correctly if you do this, because you start misguiding it, and you potentially ruin things too. Yeah,
we'll discuss how it might work in terms of the reality of the nuts and bolts of bringing everything together. But Chris, when you talk about Paulie saying, oh, cool things could be done, we already had the 5-on-5 promoter versus promoter matchup. Obviously, it was a one-sided affair, but brought us some exciting fights and got the promoters personally involved in what was going on. That out-of-the-box kind of thinking, you think we'll see more of that?
Yeah, I mean, like the champ said, I think so far what Turki Alalshikh has brought to the sport of boxing has been fantastic. The health of the sport right now is at an all-time high. I mean, we were having some great fights in the lower weight classes, and then Turki came in and made the heavyweight division hot again. And it's really hot. And generally, people have looked at the sport of boxing and go, oh, the heavyweight division is healthy, the rest of the sport is healthy. Now we're healthy from top to bottom. And now we're getting some of these ideas, these fresh thoughts. The 5-on-5, I thought was excellent. I don't care about which promoter won. It put on good fights. It made a good show top to bottom in the UFC model of having a deep card where you're not just tuning in for the main event. You're excited for every fight on the card. That aspect of it was perfect. And as a fight fan and as a pundit, that's what I want to see. I don't care if one promoter beats the other one. That's on them. That's what makes it competitive. That's not nothing to do with the fans. The fans are worried about the fights and good fights. They're you can root for whoever, just to whatever, or for betting. But for the most part, you want good fights.
And if you talk about league situation, I mean, I don't know how you structure it exactly, but I would put an entire card of lightweights, all the top lightweights against one another, or an entire card of super middleweights, all the top super middleweights against one another, an entire card of super lightweights, the weight classes that are pretty deep, and just match them all against one another. And whoever doesn't join, you shame them. You shame them for ducking. That's how you do it. And you force everybody to fight each other. And then you give them enough money, obviously. There's compensation is good. And, of course, it makes it exciting both for the fighters, the competitive aspect, it gets your juices flowing as a fighter, and from the fans' point of view, I mean, dude, now you got something to look forward to on your Saturdays for real with these fights, There's a lot of positive, potentially.
So when this first came up, right away, because I'm a boxing guy, I've been in this sport for so long, I'm super pessimistic. And I thought of all the bad things, all the problems that this could potentially be. The monopoly, the too much power, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, all these kind of things. But then I started thinking about all the good things and how this guy should be done the right way. You mentioned nuts and bolts. Paul, you mentioned about how they're doing this the right way, how to roll this out. I don't know how to roll this out, but there's a few things that I think would be really, really helpful. And at the end of the day, it's all about protecting the fighters, right? Something that we don't have is a global commission, something to oversee everything that's going on. I think this is a position or a place where this could actually become a reality. And then we're looking after the fighters. Things like healthcare for the fighters, pensions, universal year-round drug testing, things like that actually can help the fighters, I think would be where you would start. And then from there, you go to like this thing, what the champ was saying, all right, let's make a super lightweight card, or how about one better, make a super lightweight unification championship tournament, where now we're getting all these titleists to fight each other, and we're getting one unified champion. And then from there, we can kind of decide, or not decide, but figure out who the tops of each division are, and then go from there. I mean,
Actually, I'm going to push back there. I don't like just the champions fighting each other. I need the contenders in there too. I don't want these fantasy fights, because then you X out all the contenders and you make the circle smaller. That's the one thing I do worry about. Like if you start talking about Gervonta Davis Inoue or Canelo Crawford, all of a sudden you're Xing out a lot of very good fighters, and they never get into that circle of trust.
We're doing
you
that.
need everybody in the circle of trust.
We're doing that
meet
anyway.
The parents.
We're doing that anyway. Except we got guys fighting in other weight classes.
Exactly. So we got to do it the right way, and that's where this would have to come in. You got to keep it the right way. So if you get a lightweight tournament, for example, or super lightweight tournament, for example, you got the champions in it too, but you also have the contenders. Make it like 8 guys.
Right, here's my pushback. Who does the ranking?
The champions top 4. They're seeded. You get seeded. Whether you're the top.
By who?
The world sanctioning bodies. Those are the top 4.
See, that's an issue.
I remember when I used to go to nationals, there were 4 bids, at least back 20-something years ago. I don't know how the nationals work now in the amateurs. Sorry, guys. But when I was in the amateurs, the top 4 were at-large bids. If you were ranked in the top 4, you were automatically an at-large bid, and you were put in the 4 different corners of the bracket, so that you didn't have to fight each other until at least the semis if you all advanced. And I think you create this kind of tournament, and you make the 4 world champions the at-large bids, and then the rest of them are you fill with contenders and rank them, and then whatever you mix and match them. Eventually, you'll get the unification anyway if they're all in it.
Yeah. Well, the cream will rise to the top. I'm not going to do my Macho Man Savage voice. It's not great right now, but the cream will rise to the top. But how will it get done? We discuss how the pieces might come together right after this. It takes a great challenger to bring the best out of a champion. That's right, the undefeated Irishman Fergal McCrory taking on Lamont Roach Jr. in Washington, D.C., his hometown, June 28th on ProBox TV. It's going to be absolutely outstanding. Do not miss it. But the face of boxing, we're discussing maybe the changes that will be coming in 2025. That's right, Turki Alalshikh and Saudi money coming in and might be making a league of promoters that will change the face of the sport. Chris, you said it. You were a little pessimistic when you first heard about it. Let's dive into the details because that's where the devil lives, right? One of the things we talked about off air leading up to this, we were discussing this informally. You said sanctioning bodies might become completely irrelevant. Well, who decides who's champion? Do you have one lineal champion based on this particular league? Well, then one guy, it's hard for boxers to make money if there aren't multiple champions. What are some of the difficulties you foresee, Chris?
So either you completely abolish the governing bodies, and then like you talked about having one unified champion, going back to the old school days where there was one champion in every weight class, or you have to police these governing bodies, and you have to have some kind of control. There's someone looking over that to make sure that they're not just overusing their power and just taking money and doing whatever with it, which I'm not saying they're doing that, but it certainly seems that can be the case from time to time. Being able to police that and control the rankings. We spoke about rankings in the last segment. How do we get to these rankings? A lot of times right now it's the governing bodies. A lot of times it's the guys and this and that. I don't know what the best way to do the rankings are, but I think that's really important for this to actually work out, is to be able to, if not abolish the governing bodies, actually police their rankings. So we're actually getting the right guys fighting for these fights, the people who've earned it and are getting there. But there's a lot of moving parts in this. It's a very interesting concept.
What do you think the fate might be? I mean, your criticisms of the governing bodies themselves. A lot of fighters go, hey, where does my money go with these guys? What's your thought on it?
Yeah, I don't know really how you have a sport without the governing bodies. I'd like to eliminate all the regional titles and just keep just the world championships, maybe some continental titles. But I mean, here's the thing: you still need an outer layer of the sport. I mean, this is all great as far as the upper echelon of the sport fighting each other. But what happens? Say it's a season, right? Say it's a league, and all these guys fight each other. You get a winner at the end. What do? How do you decide who qualifies for the next season's version of the tournament? You know what I'm saying? So you've got to still have an outlying layer that is also very organized, and it's got to be run the right way. I don't particularly have any ideas of how to do that, but it can't just be where you just focus on the upper layer, and then the middle and lower tiers, there's no focus on it. Otherwise, you wind up in essentially a totalitarianism, sporting version of totalitarianism, where the middle class is dead, and you're just recycling the top all the time. It's not really that fun. You might be convinced that those would be the best fighters, but how would you know?
It's not that far off from what's happening already.
But who would deserve that? Well, then the sport is dead. Because then you're just recycling the same guys over and over again, and
we complain about that all the time.
Unless you dumb down the population, which is obviously not that hard. Dumb population, getting dumbed down is part of life, right? But I mean, a normal person will be like, bro, I want to see, the other guys in this league. How do they show themselves to be deserving of entering this fray from season to season? I don't want to see the same 8 guys fight each other. That's one of the risks here. You know what I mean? you keep them around, but you know what? Let's just mix and match weight classes and do it fantasy style. I don't want to see that either. You know what I mean? I don't need that in my life. I want to see the sport continuing to churn and move. I want to see the Shakur Stevensons of the world get chances to fight the other top lightweights and see who beats who. You know, I don't want to have to wonder. I don't want to have to sit here and say, oh, what if? This is what if we are talking about that this is going to happen, and we're optimistic about the possibilities of this injection of money by Turki Alalshikh, where all these fights can happen, then, like I said, it needs to be guided correctly. If you guide it correctly, I think the potential is phenomenal. There's so much good that could come out of it. But again, it needs to be guided correctly. You know, you need like some counselors on the side, just putting in their ideas as well for the top.
One thing that I think bogs down the sport quite a bit is that we're not teams, we're individuals. They're fighters. They're, you know, and guys get hurt and fights get pushed back, and guys don't fight for very often. One thing that we've seen with Turki Alalshikh and his entry into the sport is now we got guys fighting more often. These heavyweights, they lose and they still fight in a couple months later. That never used to happen. A guy would lose, you wouldn't see him for a year back on a big show. Now you see him 6 months later, where normally that would never happen. So I think if the money's there, the shows are there, the ability to make the fights happen are there, we're going to see guys fight much more often. And I think that's really important for the sport. And I'm not saying when I talk about abolishing the governing bodies that we're getting rid of all the titles and have one more. I actually think the other titles are important. I don't mind that we have multiple titles in a weight class right now. I don't think we need to have just one.
It makes unification special.
It makes unification special. It gives opportunity for a lot of fighters. Like you talked about other guys being able to get there. Listen, if you're in anyways weight class, there's going to be one champion for a long time. You know, but if there's other titles opportunities, with titles come money and negotiating power, and I think that's really important for these other fighters also, in the weight class so they can get to that level where they can fight a guy like him.
Also, one thing people don't ever realize when they talk about this one champion per weight class, one thing they never realize is that was in an era where guys were fighting every 3 weeks.
Right.
You can't have one
that was my point.
You can't have one champion in a weight class and a guy fights once a year. Otherwise, the weight class never moves, and deserving guys will never get title shots.
Those guys had 200 fights.
You know, because your prime will go right by. You never got a title shot, and that will happen way more often if you have one champion in a weight class. So unless you're able to pull off where guys fight every 3 weeks, like in the 50s, you can't have one champion in every weight class because too many good fighters would never get a title shot.
One of the difficulties, and we've discussed it, is it's a positive, right? Some kind of universal drug testing system. Folks, here's the rub when it comes to drug testing in combat sports is everybody's on board until tests cost you fights, right? We've seen it a million times. I want a clean sport. I want a clean sport. So-and-so tests hot, and we go, oh, that cost us the fight, and promoters feel the burn, and fighters feel the burn. And it's been an issue from the beginning in combat sports.
Let's be honest. Do promoters care if the guys are on drugs or not? No, they want good fights. They don't care. They want the best guys possible.
From the reaction of the failures, clearly the fans don't either.
Right.
But from the fighter's perspective, knowing how dangerous this is and what we do, you know, we're not action figures for your entertainment. We love entertaining you guys, but we're not action figures for your entertainment. You know what I'm saying? So the safety should be there. You're right in that when it costs you fights, promoters, everybody gets mad, everybody loses money. Right. But here's the thing: if you're testing from the grassroots up, all the way up, if you're cresting, you're never going to have that superstar get there who's
above
full of PEDs, who's above the testing. So therefore, nobody is above it. The reason right now everybody gets mad when a failed test costs you a fight is because you allowed that guy to get there that way anyway. So now all of a sudden he's up there, he's way above where he should be, and now it costs you a fight. Like, man, if you would have been doing it from the grassroots point, he'd have never got there to begin with, right? At least not to that level, you know? So to me, that's the most complicated thing, man, because it's got to be grassroots.
Also, without ped use, like rampant ped use, we're not going to see guys reigning for as long as they have been, and we're going to see more champions. We're going to see more turnover.
Reigning as long as they would, fighting as old as they do, and changing weight classes as much as they do. Yeah. Those three things will be out. They will be a thing of yesterday.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the promoters have to sign on for this, right? Very big names, very big egos. Will they do it, and how? We'll discuss it right after this. Welcome back to ProBox TV's Deep Waters. We're discussing a hypothetical league that seems to be coming together in 2025 with a whole lot of Saudi money. His Excellency Turki Alalshikh maybe bringing boxing into the future in a very different way. Now, gentlemen, one of the things we have not touched on is very important. He wants to bring the promoters together. A lot of egos, a lot of big names, a lot of big money. Who do you see buying into this? Who do you think would maybe put up resistance when you look at the big names out there? Paulie, what are some thoughts, man?
Ted DiBiase once said it, Everybody has a price. I think everybody buys into it if they get their price.
Turki's the $1 million man, right?
Turki's $1 million man. He knows everybody has a price. It's about negotiating it.
Oh, yeah.
$1 billion man.
By the way,
but back when the $1 million man was around, $1 million
that
man
meant something.
was cool. Now you got to be the $1 billion man, right? So, but I think nonetheless, I think Turki Alalshikh has the funds. Again, he needs the guidance because you don't want to have to overspend when you don't need to. Because the overspending, the reason I say that is not because he doesn't have the money, but the overspending could be, that money could be going somewhere else that could also be helping the sport. So if you balance it the right way and just figure out the right negotiations, I think you get everybody involved. And you can also fund money into the right fights as well, and that helps everybody.
Now, Bob Arum, 92 years old. All right. One of the issues we've talked about here on this show, and you said it, Paulie, earlier, is that we're cycling the same names over and over, right? In the sport of boxing, we're hearing about the same guys for years and years and years. What about promoters? People have been in this business 50 years. Do you think some of them cash out? Do you think the younger ones with maybe stables that they believe they can go on their own, put up more resistance? What do you thought on that, Chris?
Well, yeah, I certainly, you look at Bob Arum, you look at Top Rank, someone who's been in the sport for 50 years. He pretty much wrote the textbook on how to promote boxing. I think it's important to, like the champ alluded to, that you need some help and some guidance, and I think that those promoters can help that in that sense. That all right, so if you're buying all of them out,
can we trust them not to look out for their own pockets instead of the sport? Because that's what they do now.
That's why you get them a share of what this whole thing is going on, and then you have a board, and you guys have to be able to negotiate and work together as a committee. Yeah, I generally don't like committees, but there's so much knowledge with all those promoters. And listen, maybe I'm thinking altruistically, like everyone's going to try and do the right thing and make the sport. But if it's lining their own pockets, they're all working together and making money for everybody, and the sport lives on, rather than just getting a buyout and walking away. Because there are guys that are not going to want to do that. Oscar De La Hoya is still a young guy. He's in his early 50s. He's still a face in the name of boxing. Eddie Hearn is a young guy. He's in this sport. He likes being in front of the camera. He likes being involved in these sports. Do they want to just take their buyout and walk? I don't know if that's the case. PBC, you got Al Heyman. He's not really in the spotlight anyway. You got Bob Arum, who's 92 years old. How much does he really want to be in the spotlight anymore? So it's going to be different for each one, but I do think there's enough to go around in terms of what the market and the networks.
But here's the thing: you need somebody. I don't know. You need somebody who's genuinely for the sport. Honestly,
Teddy Ellis.
I was going to say Teddy, who's here with us and also is in good with those with Turki Alalshikh and all that. I think he's
also a no nonsense guy.
Yeah, because if the contracts being given by the networks to the promoters have shown us anything, it's that the promoters will groom certain fighters to become stars on these networks and then make sure they never get beat on that network. So now you're using your network just to line your pockets to protect your own fighter instead of doing what the network is supposed to do, which is create the best fights possible on that network. Now all of a sudden you're creating the stars you want to create, you're matching them correctly to where they don't get beat, and then you're creating this product on that network. The higher ups of the network don't even look at boxing. They're just giving you the dates, and you're ruining the platform. So that's why I don't trust the promoters being involved in this, because the promoters have this tendency to try to create this product, look out for it, get the judges in on it as well. Then when robberies need to happen on behalf of this product, we've seen it constantly through decades, and then all of a sudden you create this product. And then that's the one you're talking about. When that product fails a PED test, for example, it's up in arms. Right. So if you don't have a grassroots way to correctly run this, it's the trickle-down effect of
that's my point. You're going to wipe out the 50 years of knowledge of Bob Arum. You're going to wipe out these guys that have been here for this long, who know how the inner workings of this sport work. Yeah, they know how the inner workings are and how to cut corners.
I'll tell you what.
But they also know how it works.
I'll tell you what. Top Rank has created all the stars for me, right? I mean, De La Hoya.
Wrote the textbook on
Pacquiao,
yes.
Mayweather.
Over and over again, consistently.
There.
And has
Don
built them
King
from
was as well.
Nothing.
He just burned all his bridges. Don King was as well. The new promoters don't really create stars, dude. They just get a lot of dates. They do what I just told you they do. They make the right matches, keep a guy winning.
So you're saying we got to clone Bob Arum?
The idea, the way it was, I don't know if that time has passed the way they were marketing the fighters back then. Say what you will about Arum and King, because ethically, especially King, ethically is a cesspool, like a toilet seat. You know what I'm saying? But they knew how to promote boxing, man. They created legitimate boxing stars.
What I'm hearing partly, and this is another thing we discussed off air a little bit, no problem telling you guys at home this, when we were originally discussing this, we said, well, every other sport is a monopoly as well. MLB, NFL, everything.
It has a grooming system though for the AAA and AA. There's a system where you're earning your way up there, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it's the unionization of the players. The players.
That's the counterbalance.
Yes. So fighters are dog eat dog and will not work together. If for example, if I'm the promoter and I want Jimmy, hey Jimmy, I want you to fight so and so, but you tell me you want 10 million, how much you want? 8? Cool. You're in. You're out. Meanwhile, if you spoke to each other and be like, hey, listen, let me get my 10, then I'll fight you and we'll both get 10. If you work together. But fighters don't do that. There's no union. Or if someone was overseeing it, they're going to come together and be like, all right, well, now we're going to make this happen so everybody gets paid. Promoters don't need to do that. Fight promoters don't need to do that. So it's the unionization of the athletes themselves that allows them to make that lion's share of that money that they're earning for the network. Boxing isn't like that. There's a guy who's at the top, and he can decide what's going to happen with who and who gets paid what. And if you don't want it, someone else will, and I'll get that guy.
Yeah, that's the issue. Is the counterbalance of a powerful league in charge of boxing sounds good. We might get some great fights, but unless there's a powerful, every other major sport has a union. Yeah. That's the counterbalance. Without that, it might be tough on the fighters. Paulie, what's your thought on that, man?
Yeah, and it's tough on the fighters to even come together because again, pro boxing. It's not like Major League Baseball. There's a cut to make the major leagues, right? I mean, there's pro boxing. Any schmuck.
People ask me all the time, it's like, oh, can you go pro now? It's like, well, you can go. Anyone can go pro.
Yeah, any schmuck can turn pro. So
get your fingerprints done. You're a pro.
There has to be a cutoff to where that collective bargaining players union, so to speak, is in and you're out. You have to have a certain amount of experience, a certain amount of accolades, possibly, to be involved in that union, and then the union can kind of get together themselves. Then you actually need some intelligent people. You need to get along, which, in
the fight world, who knows? And there are a lot of questions about how this would come together and what the balances would be. We will keep you informed about all of it. But social media, it always gives us a story. We'll break into that story when we come back.
What's up, Turkey? Hey, all is well over here, man. Hope all is well over there where you at. Hey, man, what's up, man? When you coming to camp? Pull up on me.
That's a life goal of mine, to have a billionaire. I can go, hey, Turkey, what's up? You gonna come see me? You gonna roll up to my camp in Omaha? What do you think of that ability to say, hey, Turkey, what's up? You gonna roll in?
I'm not crazy about it. A guy like Turkey, if he's gonna run the sport, he can't have his favorites like that. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was a bit of a turnoff to see him try to push AJ versus Wilder before Zhang knocked out Wilder. To tell you the truth, I don't like that. I get the fighter's gonna try to get all the advantages he can and get moved, align himself politically with the best way. Hey, come to camp, hang out with me. It's not really a good look though. Not for Terrence. Obviously, for Terrence, he's trying to again politically get in, but. If Turkey would do stuff like that, it wouldn't be a good look. You don't want to come off as a fan. You want to come off as the guy at the top who's making things work and making things right. I don't want to see you as the fan. You know what I mean? I want to see you as sort of the hierarchy and make a guy who's qualified to make things work.
Jimmy, you win 8, 9, 10 world titles, and you too can meet and talk to billionaires in this fashion.
That's all you need to do is be the greatest of all time, right?
Just be one of the greatest fighters ever lived. And to Champ's point, you got to be careful, and that's one of the things where. Turkey, we always talk about Turkey's money, but we forget to talk about Turkey's passion. He's very passionate about the sport, and he's a fan of the sport, and he's a fan of fighters. And that can be dangerous because you get that crossover, like Gibbs Champ said, you get some favorites, and you start talking about fantasy matchups where guys are fighting dragons and bears and not fighting other fighters in their weight class.
Lions and tigers.
Lions and tigers and dragons and bears and oh my, whatever. But we want to see the right kind of fights. And this is why, I've said it before, Turkey's very, very smart, and he's learning on the job, and he's learning very quickly. But he needs a committee of people around him who know how this sport works so he can get a little bit of that committee thought process going so they can figure out what the best fights are, keep their ear to the ground for what the fans want, and provide what we actually want to see in the sport.
Promoters can have favorites. The head of a league cannot.
Correct. Right.
You know what?
Good way to put it.
Guidance, Turkey, Teddy, Atlas, and Turki Alalshikh. TNT. Let's do it.
That's it. It's done, TNT. We'll get it done here on ProBox TV. Thank you so much for watching. More news. We'll fill you in next time. Thank you so much.